You asked who is a leader? Uh, if you have influence over anybody, regardless the scene or context, whether it's a father, a mother, a husband, a fireman, an officer, if you have influence over people, then you are a leader, and there's a responsibility there.
What's up, guys? Welcome back. Another episode, Tailboard Misfits podcast. We're doing something a little different, kind of launching a new endeavor through the platform here to be able to just continue to add value into the fire service in whatever ways that we can. So, as you can see, we do have a co-host today. Is my good friend, Brad Conrado, and I'll let him introduce himself here in just a second. But first and foremost, I just want to say thank you. I recently had an article published through Firefighter Nation, who's also now streaming the podcast. And I've received a lot of very humbling feedback from it. I'm not much of a writer. Most of the time when I do write, it's just to get it out of my head so I can stop obsessing over something. And to see, first of all, some certain individuals that have shared it and reached out to me personally has been truly humbling. But just then to see and hear the feedback from everyday firemen like myself and know that they resonated with exactly what I was writing. So I really appreciate that. We're going to get into what we're about to do, but first I'm going to let Brad introduce himself. So Brad, brother, what's up?
Hey guys. Yeah, my name is Brad. I'm super honored to be on the podcast and be able to do this. I'm obviously super passionate about leadership, and man, I love your podcast. I love what you're doing. Obviously, you're a brother and a friend, so thank you for letting me be on here. I'm a driver, work for the same department as John. We get to go to work and fight fire together, which is a blast. But yeah, I'm stoked. It's going to be fun.
Yeah. And for context, Brad's been on Tailboard Misfits before. He was on an episode previously with Gunner. And then if you guys remember the relaunch episode, which was episode 1, when I took it over, he was on that episode as well. And what I will say is Brad was part of the Grabs podcast that was released through the firemanship conference this last year that was just released. So he's my driver at work. So that's why a lot of times that we got to make sure that we're going to be a little more clear, because a lot of people don't understand the banter that Brad and I might have back and forth. So, but moving on to what we're going to do. So really in the fire service we have, and really in just throughout the podcast realm, there's a lot of leadership podcasts out there and a lot of really good ones that I listen to, that I know Brad listened to. And there's still some really good podcasts specific to the fire service when it comes to leadership. But one thing that I'm super passionate about, and something that I hear and listen to, and my favorite podcasts are rather, they really give detailed principles of leadership. And what they're really good at is giving actionable steps. And a lot of times they're not privy to what we do in the fire service and the realities that we face and the problems that we face. They're super specific to us, honestly, and maybe some other public service realms. But what we wanted to do and what I wanted to do was really revisit a bunch of different leadership principles and concepts and really give you guys some actionable steps to take to get better at those things. Also, for context, it's not like it's not a secret. I'm not an officer at work. I'm not an officer in my volunteer department. I'm a tailboard fireman at both. Brad is a driver, although he gets to step into that officer role, so he has a little context there. But Brad's been doing the leadership thing a lot longer than me. I just want to give you guys this context, is we've dedicated a lot of time to studying leadership and actually getting to put these principles into practice and what it looks like at different steps throughout a career in the fire service. So, although we might touch on what it looks like and what it sounds like for chief officers or captains or someone at a higher rank than us, just know that we are speaking it from a sense of what it would look like from us, if that makes sense. And Brad can probably elaborate a little bit better on that.
Yeah, so getting to ride that seat has added a lot of perspective, which I think is super important. And one of the beauties about me riding up into the seat, I believe, is being able to see that added perspective of what it's like to fill that role and make an impact on the crew on the day-to-day. So I think it's super important.
We haven't even really gotten into it yet, but as you were just saying that, I had a question pop into my mind, so I'm going to ask you. So you've had this idea, more or less, for the last several years on what it looks like to be an officer, what a good officer is, what a bad officer is in that realm. What has changed since you've been able to actually ride in that seat? Like, I know you've gained context, but has your mind like opened up to been like, man, I now understand why certain things happen the way they happen, when previously, because I wasn't put into that role, I didn't quite understand it and may have even had, a negative outlook on something.
Yeah, I think the first thing that comes to mind is it's given me the opportunity, or not necessarily the opportunity, but the perspective and willingness to give a lot of grace, to my officers and the people that are above me, because there's just things that you don't understand until you're put into that role. There's responsibilities that even as and I hate to use this word, but subordinate, as a subordinate that you don't even realize or you don't put an emphasis on because it's not in your circle of responsibility, which we can talk about. But yeah, I think grace, it's given me a lot of grace for my officer because people are going to make mistakes. We're all people. We talk about leadership, and I'm sure we'll hit this at some point, but I believe the greatest leader of all time is a unicorn. And there was one to walk the face of the earth, in my opinion. And so I think you have to have a lot of grace for people. And I think riding in that role has given me that perspective to have that grace. But it's also given me a greater perspective when it comes to what the expectation is. And so I can kind of help hold those officers accountable in my position to say, okay, hey, this is what should be getting done. And it's my responsibility not to do that for you, but to be a help to get you there. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. I figured you'd have something cool to say about that. So just kind of moving on to this, one of the most important things for this is there's a million different definitions of what a leader is. And one thing I wanted to be clear on is the definition that I know I believe in, and Brad might have a smaller, or not smaller, but like a different definition. But it's also no secret if you listen to the podcast that I'm a John Maxwell nut, and he says that leadership is influence, and that is what I 100% believe, and I've seen it work. So when we're speaking about leadership, just know that's the definition we're using. Is leadership is influence. And moving on, like we've kind of talked about it, this podcast or this new stream of content, like, it's not just specifically for your appointed officers or your awarded officers. It's not just for lieutenants. It's not just for captain. It's not just for tailboard firemen. Like, it's for everybody to listen to and learn from, and hopefully get some value added into their lives. So I was going to ask Brad because he has a great definition of this, and I wanted him to talk about it. And the other thing is, like, do you think you're a leader? If not, like, why don't you think you're a leader? So who is a leader and why, Brad?
Yeah, I think it's important to ask that question. I love asking that question to people because when my mind was open to this, it was pretty empowering if you let it be. But yeah, I would agree. Maxwell, you're right. He says leadership is influence. It's nothing more. It's nothing less. I love the quote, a leader that is taking a walk has no followers is just that. He's just taking a walk. He's not a leader. So I think to be a leader, you have to have influence. And you asked who is a leader? If you have influence over anybody, regardless the scene or context, whether it's a father, a mother, a husband, a fireman, an officer, if you have influence over people, then you are a leader, and there's a responsibility there. So yeah, everybody's a leader. And I think when you start owning that responsibility, when you start taking it seriously, they change your life, really, in a lot of ways.
So today, the best thing that I wanted to start off with, and it's something that is applicable to everybody, it's attitude. And I love the quote, and I don't know who said it because I know a million different people have said it, but we don't control what happens to us, but we do control how we react to those things. Attitude is so important, and specifically in the fire service, especially when you're, or on an ambulance, if you're working in a busy system, attitude is everything. The way you approach different situations, your mindset towards not just the job, but the minuscule things that you come across every single day on duty. It's everything. Attitude, I looked up an actual definition of what attitude is. It says actions, feelings, and words that determine the actions, feelings, and words of those around us. And I think that's pretty well said. The way I talk, the way I act, the things that I do are going to directly impact those around us. And so there's certain different things that attitude can do to not just you, and your mindset and the way that you act, but also to those around us. It can do everything from affecting other people's attitudes, affecting the morale of your crew, even getting deeper. It can affect team dynamics and the way that you perform on jobs, whether it be a normal medical call or a fire. So today we just wanted to talk about attitude and give you some actionable steps to maybe you have a good attitude and you wanted to affect someone else's attitude, or you wanted to just try to speak life into someone, or you kind of have a crappy attitude like we all do sometimes, and you wanted to start changing those. So the first thing I wanted to add into it was just how it affects others around us. And me and Brad were kind of talking before the episode, and one of the best examples, because I'm sure it's all happened, is you yourself show up to the firehouse early in the morning and you're ready for the day. You're in a good mood. You're ready to take on whatever you have to do that day. And one of your crew members walks in and they just have, a crappy attitude. They're like, man, I'm sleepy. I'm not here today. I don't want to be here today. I didn't want to come into work. And immediately, like, put yourself into those shoes. How does that make you feel? I know for me, when I'm in a good mood, if I showed up to work and worked out and I just, kind of got the endorphins flowing that morning and show up, and then someone walks in and I could just see it written all over their face, like they don't want to be here, or they're still sleepy or whatever. They're not excited to be at work. I can feel that internally. And I'm like, I can't be as up as what I want to be right now, because I'm trying to not impose on their attitude or their mind. That's the way I've kind of felt about that. Brad, I didn't know if you had something to add to that.
Yeah. I think so. Given that scene and that example, I think is really good and helpful. I think I put myself in your shoes. If I'm having a good day, and really, it's regardless of my day, it's regardless of my emotion, I feel responsible for the people within my influence, which are the guys at the station. If they come in with a negative attitude, regardless if I'm having a good day, bad day, or whatever, my mindset goes is, okay, how it's rooted in a place of how can I serve them, right? How can I serve them? And I think in that moment is, okay, I need to just talk to them, right? Because sometimes, body language accounts for 80% of communication, but you could come in and get a bad read, right? So my first thing is just, approach them with a good attitude and say, hey man, what's up? And given the response, oh man, whatever, I didn't get any sleep last night, the kids kept me up, or, me and the wife are going through whatever it is, just create the conversation, create the space. I think for one, it allows them to kind of offload, which is what we are at Station. We're a family, and we need to, that's part of having that tribe, which I'm sure you'll get into. And once you create the conversation, I think it opens you up to have more influence in the moment, which is, you start asking good questions, okay, and kind of lead them and get their morale back and get their mood up. And, you're not personally responsible for people's attitudes and emotions, but like you said, if I'm having a good day or a bad day, most days I come in with a good attitude or the desire to have a good attitude. I think you can create a lot of impact there just in that conversation, and try to do it first thing early in the morning. Don't let it stew. If you're a company officer, man, that is your job, is to get a pulse on every man on your crew walking in the door that day. Where are they at? Where's their headspace? Good day, bad day, normal day, whatever it is. And if it's anything less than we're ready to go and we're happy to be here, you're charged with the responsibility to have that conversation. So, yeah.
Yeah. I know, like, when you're talking, like, I've been guilty of this, is, probably even with you, like, you come in and you're not feeling well, like you are right now or something. And I could tell that, or just someone, didn't have to be you, but like comes in and their attitude's not where it should be. And, I'm feeling like it is, like, I've been very guilty of just writing that person off for the day. Like, I'm keeping my distance from them. And like I said, feel a little bit convicted when you said that. It's like, yeah, when I have practiced that, when I have like said, hey man, what's up? Like, you good? Or just simple that simple question of, hey man, you good? And just letting them talk about it. And a lot of times it's like, hey man, I get it. I understand. Then I've seen that where we could just move on from it. I know how he feels about that certain situation that's going on. And he's able to, like, okay, hey, my bro knows what's up. Let's move on. And it's actually helped. So super important. Just check on your boys and make sure they're doing good first thing in the morning, and not let it stew. Because looking back, when I have just written someone off more or less for the day, I have seen it to where it's like, okay, they've been in that mood all day, versus me putting into practice exactly what you just said, and their mood almost instantly changing, getting into a better mood and being able to attack the day ready to go.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's super important. You got to hit it early.
All right, I'm writing this down. Sorry. The next thing was how it can affect your personal performance on the job. We're all firemen, but we also work, at least Brad and I do, and not necessarily scared to say this anymore, but we also work on an ambulance, and at our department, we're very prideful in doing good patient care and being not just aggressive firemen, but aggressive paramedics as well. And
Expect
I feel
victims, expect wall times.
that's right. That's right. I feel like I want to say this, but it's just, and I'm going to, like, for me coming into work, it is so easy for me to come into work and have a good attitude when I know that I'm going to be on a fire truck, when I'm going to be on the engine. It's so easy for me to come in and be in a good mood. Where I battle this battle every single day is when I come in and I know that I'm going to be on an ambulance. And it's not anything malicious towards EMS, and it's not anything malicious towards like what we're doing. It's just like, at the end of the day, like, I'm passionate about being a fireman, and anything less than that, like, takes a lot of pride swallowing for me. And it's not that I hate being a paramedic. It's not that I hate running the calls. It's just an internal battle that I have to have with myself every day. And so I know I'm saying me, but like, I know we've all probably done this, is like, I've been showed up and not doing what I've expected to do, or maybe not in the mood for me, ride the ambulance. And it has affected, like, I get behind the 8 ball on a call or something like that. It's just like, because my mindset wasn't prepared to attack that call the way that it needed to be attacked. It caught me on my heels and caught me off guard. When vice versa, I've showed up and had the right attitude, and I could just tell that, like, everything is above the standard. The way I talk to people, the way I treat people, not just the way I treat people, but like the way that I actually treat people medically, like, it's all above the standard when I have that right attitude. And same thing on the fire side of things. We've all showed up to work and not just really felt it, and it's just like, okay, it's super hard to go do training. It's super hard to just talk shop. It's super hard to really just want to intertwine with the crew, or whatever you want to say. And so how your attitude affects your performance, I think, is super important for us to look at, because at the end of the day, we want to be the best for our crew, but we also want to be the best for the citizens that we serve.
Yeah, so I think attitude is everything in a lot of ways. How you come in and start your day based on your attitude is going to dictate the rest of that day. It's going to dictate the amount of influence that you have in that day with the people that are around you. And man, I'll be honest, like, obviously, yeah, we run an EMS based service, and we can sit here and talk about the ups and downs of that. I mean, anybody who listens to this, they know, right? Yes, people would rather be on a fire truck than an ambulance most days, given, the majority of people probably listen to this. But I enjoy being a paramedic, and, a lot of people may scrutinize me or give me crap for that. But when we sit down and we look at it seriously, I think what we do is, like, when you look into the job description, like, we're there to serve, we're there to be a public servant and meet people on their worst day, whether their house is on fire or they're having a heart attack. It's our job. And we come in with a negative attitude. You're right. It's going to dictate, it's going to have a huge impact on our performance. And we want to perform at the top level, right? And it's so easy for us to go to these fire trainings, firemanship, whatever, and come back with this mindset of like, dude, we're ready, but you get on the ambulance for the day, and sometimes it's just like, okay, like, there's nothing there for me. I just got to get through it. I just got to run these patients that, are abusing the system, or whatever the case is. But I think when you look at it, you have an opportunity there to serve. And so I think when I focus on that coming in for the day, if I'm assigned to the medic that day, like, hey, I have an opportunity here, and I can squander it or I can capitalize on it. And I know it's easy to say, and obviously some days are easier than others, but I think that's where I like to start. And I know we'll get into routines, daily routines, but I think it's really, really important.
Yeah, I actually had this conversation pretty recently with someone, because we were on a call and I just noticed the tone of his voice. And I was just like, I was caught off guard by it, because although I'm not perfect, I do try to practice the things that I talk about. And, I was in a good mood, good attitude for the day. And like, first call out of the run is just like, I heard tone in someone's voice. It was just like, kind of put off by it. Like, this is pretty cut and dry, and we're already starting off on the wrong foot when it comes to the way we're talking. And I ended up having this conversation like, bro, if you let these calls or you let these things affect you to the point where you're getting upset at this, like you're going to get burnt really quickly. Like at the end of the day, you control the way that you react. Like you don't have to match that person's tone. You don't have to match their attitude. If they're giving you a crappy attitude or whatever, whether it be a patient on a call or your boy at the firehouse, like you don't have to match their attitude. You can just go the direction that you want to go. If they're being crappy, like, okay, well, just tell me about it. Like, just talk to them like a normal person. Go back to the golden rule. Treat people the way that you'd want to be treated. And I told them that I had to be super convicted on that not too long ago, because it's just like I was listening to, dang, I'm going to go name blank, but you guys have probably all heard it. They were talking about searching abandoned buildings, and right, and we're all or vacant houses. And we're all gung-ho to make a search, and we're all wanting to jump in through windows and search, even if it's a dilapidated structure that we could tell probably no one is supposed to be living in. But it's just like, how did you treat the homeless person 30 minutes ago on that EMS call? You tried to talk him out of going to the hospital, right? Like, I was super convicted in that. And it's just like, I had that conversation with him. It's like, you control that. You control your tone towards these people that we interact with on a daily, and you can set the tone for the call. You could take someone, and I know you've seen it, Brad, on calls. You could take someone that's way up here, their anxiety, their frustration, and they're going to put it on us. It's just the way that it works, and bring them back down to here really quickly, just through your attitude, which we're talking about, but the tone of your voice, the way you approach them, and the way that you talk to them. And it was so cool to see just the light bulb turn in that person's head, in that person's eyes, just like, I've been cheating myself out of good days for quite some time at this point. It's just like, man, like I said, seeing that light bulb was super cool to see, and to hear him like banter back and forth with me about that, and just, it was awesome to look at and see and listen to, just even his tone change on the next call.
Yeah, I think, and not that this is an attitude on the ambulance podcast, but which we could dedicate a whole series to that.
We might.
I think, a couple things I'd like to unpack just quickly over that is, you encountered a guy, you could tell his tone was off. Again, it goes back to it's the same conversation as example you gave earlier with the guy walking in the fire station with a bad attitude. How do I approach that? Start asking questions, right? I want to seek first to understand, then to be understood. I want to see why he's got the attitude. Where did it come from? Most of the time, especially within that context, and I'm sure other people can relate, is they just don't feel valued, right? Whether they're on the ambulance all the time, they don't get to ride the fire truck, they don't feel valued, they don't feel taken care of. It's going to start to sway their attitude. Now, that's what we're here right now today trying to combat, is talk about how do you get ahead of that. But I think you have to go deeper. You have to figure out why are they in that place. And then another thing is just realize, like, when it comes to patient care and talking to people and talking to patients, the most success I've ever had is when you humanize the patients that you're running on, regardless of their complaint. I don't care if it's a homeless dude that's complaining of toe pain for 2 years, or it's, somebody having a heart attack. You have to humanize people. You have to get on their level and talk. And that's part of being that servant, is just treat them like people. And I think it does so much, not just for them. Obviously, you can assume the implications there and what it does for them. But what it does for us is it's a reminder, even in the moment, like, hey, this is a person, this is who I'm here to serve. And I think it helps you and it helps your attitude. Just realize, like, hey, this is what I'm here to do. So yeah, I've found a lot of success in that.
Yeah. And, we could talk about this, because I'm about to give you credit for something, because you completely changed my perspective on a lot of things. And I know that you're a man of faith, as am I. And I had this conversation the other day as well. It's just like, was listening to a sermon, and they were preaching about partiality. And it was just like, Jesus didn't just hang out with the people that were considered, high esteem, right? Like in his disciples, he had a taxpayer and all, that whole thing. And I was dang near convicted to tears at the time, because of how poorly that I was treating certain people at work, and specifically talking about just like those of less fortune than me. And it was just like, man, and you might have told me, like, or Josh Mosley actually told me, it's like, no, like, whenever you can open your eyes and realize that God sees him as a son just as he sees you as one. And it's just like, oh God, like, get chills just thinking about it. But also, like, you told me you pray like, God, please allow me to see this person the way that you see them. And that is the thing that I go to every single time since you've told me that, when I'm faced with a difficult person. When I want, my flesh wants to choose to see them as a piece of crap or whatever, like how they're presenting themselves, like that's what I go to every single time. And that has helped me tremendously. And although like I would love it if you found faith through this podcast, like we're not here to preach at you, but it's also important that you understand that that's also where a lot of the context comes from, is just being rooted in the Word of God.
Yeah. And shameless plug, I am a man of faith, and I'll tell you this, like, it's not a faith-based podcast, but I would say when you look at the life of Jesus and you look at how he led, I mean, there wasn't a better leader. And you can argue if he was the Son of God all day, and that's fine. I'd love to have that conversation with you. But when it comes down to just looking at it contextually and practically, Jesus was an incredible leader. He took care of his people. He served them. And that's why we're still talking about him thousands of years later. He made an impact. He had influence. So, yeah. One thing I'd like to hit on attitude real quick, John, is coming in for the day. I talk about anticipating the curveball. You heard me talk about that? Yeah. So I think when you come in for the day at work, as it pertains to attitude, right, is I've been telling new guys this for a long time. Our job, and it was so funny, we say, I love being a fireman because it's a new day every day. Nothing's ever the same. It's always different, right? But if we can just be honest and peel back the layer for a second and look at it, we are all creatures of habit. That's how we were created and designed. We like routine, we like habit, we like structure. And what I try to tell new guys is we do have a very fluid job. And so if you come in with the anticipation that your day is going to go one way and then it gets knocked off, it immediately affects people's attitude. And so one thing I started telling guys, is first thing, on the way into work, just anticipate the curveball. There's always going to be something, bro. Whether you thought you were going to ride this rig and now you're on this rig, or you thought you were going to have a quiet, easy Sunday and now you're doing a PR event, like whatever it is, it's not what you anticipated. And it's very easy for us to get emotionally charged and let it dictate our attitude. So I think it's super helpful. Start talking about practical things, just anticipate that something's going to be different that you're not expecting. And when it happens, right, you're anticipating it, you're prepared for it. And it's not going to come as such a shock. Every day I come into work, I'm like, all right, man, and you can take it from the negative standpoint and like, okay, it's always something, man. It's always something. Well, it is, but that's your job. That's what we signed up to do, And if we're being honest, we use it as a positive thing all the time. I love coming into work and not knowing what I'm going to do for the day, but just be ready, even when it doesn't flow in your way.
Yeah. So solid point. So another thing we were talking about is pretty summed up in this, like what you look for, you will find. So, and it kind of comes back towards just like how you start your day. And yes, we are going to get into some daily routines that kind of help with that. But if I wake up in the morning and I know that I'm going to just immediately start looking like, how can I serve my drivers today? How can I serve the other firefighter on my shift today?
Let's go.
How can I serve my drivers? How can I serve my officers, my battalion chief, whatever? If I start looking for those opportunities, I will find those. So we kind of joke about it, and I know I've used this as an example before, but like Brad and I's captain, he's a grizzly bear in the morning times before he gets coffee. Like we often joke that like he's like a caveman before he can drink. He just makes grunting noises and stuff. But like as simple as like
he rode a truck for a lot of years.
Yeah, exactly. He's still a little poisoned by the truck.
The truckie comes out in the mornings.
But something as simple as me, like knowing he's about to get up and pouring him a cup of coffee and just having it sitting there for him. I might have to seek that out, but like I'll find that opportunity if I look for it. Or checking on the other guy. If I'm riding the engine for the day and the other firefighter's on the ambulance and hey, he wants to get a workout in, and me jumping on the ambulance when he's riding, when he catch a call and he's in the middle of a workout. Or same thing for the drivers, if I look for those opportunities to serve those guys, like I will find them. But if I come to work, it's like, man, this kind of sucks. And I never, I want to do this, but I never really have the opportunity. I don't know how I'm going to do this. Like, I just won't find them. They won't come. They won't present themselves as well to me. And so what you look for, you will find. So seek those opportunities to serve your crew, seek for those opportunities to add value to them, and you'll find them. They'll come, and they might be as subtly as pouring a cup of coffee for someone or taking their plate for them after breakfast. But those are all opportunities that people will remember and make an impact on someone. They know this.
Yeah, I think opportunities to serve people, I mean, that's leadership, right? That's influence. When you serve others, that's how you start to gain leadership credibility. That's how you start to create credibility with people and relationship. And I love the Hoover quote, nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And how do you show people you care? Well, you build a relationship. You help them. You prove yourself as somebody that, can be there, that they can count on. And that's how you start to create that influence and that credibility with them. So as it pertains to attitude, like the example we gave it earlier, like when the guy walks in the morning and you can tell, you're ready to go, but you can tell something's on his head. Having the conversation, just talking to him, right? People want to know that they're cared for, that they're valued. And when I take a second to just be like, hey man, how are you? Are things good? That shows that I'm genuinely concerned. And a lot of times, man, people don't want to hear everything that you have to say. I think that's why it's good to, again, seek first to understand, then to be understood. Practically, what does that mean? Ask a lot of questions before I start giving you action steps, right? Okay, I see a guy come in with a bad attitude. I can take the approach of asking questions like, hey, man, what's going on? Hey, what's on your heart? Okay, this XYZ. Okay, well, why do you think it's making you do that? Or what happened here? Or just be inquisitive, as opposed to a guy walking in with a negative attitude and you're like, hey, man, you ain't doing that today. We're not doing that. We're here to work. We're ready to have a good attitude. Well, no, like that doesn't win with people. So I think, if you take that position of, okay, and it's a heart of service, right? It takes work. It's much easier for me to come and say, hey, John, don't have a bad attitude. I'm having a good day. Don't bring me down. It's really selfish. It's so much easier to take that route instead of putting the work in and having the conversation like, hey, man, what's up? Let's talk about this. And so I think when you can approach it that way, it makes people feel valued and you'll actually have influence to start to sway that attitude. Hopefully that's the goal. So,
yeah. So this is kind of the part where I wanted to start giving some actionable steps. And we've already talked about a few of them that we'll revisit. But one of the big things I know for Brad, he's pretty routine based as am I, have become over the years. And for me, as it pertains to attitude, one of the things that I've begun to practice really after conversations with Brad, and I know I mentioned before the podcast, Andy Frisella's, is practicing gratitude first thing in the morning. So actionable step number 1 is practicing gratitude. What does that look like for me? For me, it's right when I wake up, I just kind of follow the same routine that Frisella threw out there at one point. Especially as dudes, like what do we do when we wake up? Like for me, it's go take a piss. So after I go pee, I'm brushing my teeth. And as soon as I'm brushing my teeth, I am, thinking about all the things that I'm grateful for. God, thank you for a healthy family, for a job that I get to go to that I love, for an opportunity to serve your people. Just everything and anything I could think of just to be grateful for. And just to add to that, like one thing that I'm not perfect at that, but if I forget to do it in the first thing in the morning, most days before shift, I'll show up and walk or run. And I try to do that at the end of my run or walk. Just try to clear my head and just practice that form of gratitude. And I know Brad could tell you about his routine because it's pretty routine based. He's been doing it a lot longer than me.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of the same stuff. If it's a day before shift, one thing I love to talk about, I am a creature of routine. I love routines. Love talking about it. I have 3 schedules: the day going in for shift, the day coming off shift, and then the day before I go in. So if we're talking about going in for shift in the morning, I'll tell you every single day, I did it this morning, every day I wake up, and most people have the tendency of grabbing their phone and start to scroll. Like, I did that for years, and I read the data of why that's unhealthy. It's not good for your brain. So the first thing that I do every morning is I'll wake up and I'll sit on the edge of the bed and I just take 30, 45 seconds and I recite the Lord's Prayer. And that is so life-giving. Our Father who is in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Help me to forgive others as you have forgiven me, and lead me not in temptation, but deliver me from the evil one. And I'll walk through that prayer and just recite it line after line and just think about it and embody it and what I've learned over the years, what it means to me. I think it's just a great place to start my day. just where my head's at. Like, okay, I have a father who cares about me. I have somebody who's for me. I have a hope at the end of this life. I've got things that I need to be grateful for. I got to be things that I got to watch out for. You know, we fight battles that are unseen. There's spiritual warfare, whether you believe it or not. I do. I know there's people after my time. The devil's after my time. He's after my heart and my attitude. So it's just a good way to start the day and just equip yourself. And then I do the same thing. Wake up, go take a piss, brush my teeth, weigh myself, make sure everything's good there. I get dressed, and then I get my cup of coffee, and then I hit the truck and go. One thing that I do every morning is, and I talked about this on the Grabs podcast, is I look at that picture of, what are we supposed to say? Victim number 3. I look at that picture every morning on the way into shift, and it sits right by my back door where my running shoes are. So I see it every morning, and I just take 5 seconds. You know, usually as I'm walking by, I just look at that picture and I say, okay, it doesn't matter the day I'm having, doesn't matter what I'm walking through. This is the mission. This is the job that I signed up to do, and this could be the day. Expect fire, expect victims. And so it's just a good place to start my day, where my mind's at, what I'm supposed to be doing. And then I get in the truck. Usually I drive to work, and same thing. I try to go run before work. Some days I'll listen to podcasts. Some days I'll listen to an audiobook, but I'd say probably half the time I just sit in silence, and I just take an opportunity to just spend time in prayer. No, I don't close my eyes and drive, but I spend time with the Lord and just have conversation and kind of just work through some things if I'm working through some stuff and try to get my mind right. I love my drive into work every morning. I count it as a blessing. But one thing I do, is start my day off with gratitude. Usually that happens through that prayer, and then in the truck. You know, and what does that mean to have a time of gratitude? It means a time to be thankful for things in your life. There's actually psychology. You can look it up. It's pretty cool. I think it's by design, but you physically, neurologically, it is impossible to be negative and have a heart of gratitude at the same time. So when you're walking through things that you're thankful for, it's physically impossible to have a bad attitude and a bad mindset. So what does that look like? You know, I thank God for my kids, for my wife, for my job, maybe for some things that I'm walking through right then that I'm just recognizing and thankful for. And I take that time in that car. What I've been doing recently, and I know we talked about this, is I pray and whatever, man. Who knows what kind of backlash we're going to get on here, but I take time and I pray for each one of my fire service administrators where I work, and I pray for them as individuals. I start with the fire chief. I pray for the assistants. I pray for our division chiefs, our battalion chiefs, and I pray for each one of them. And I spend time just thanking God for them and just praying for wisdom, praying for guidance, praying that He would help me see them as He does, because it's really easy to see things coming down from administration, have a negative attitude. And again, you can't be mad and have a heart of gratitude at the same time. So I think it just kind of shapes my attitude for the day. And then I go into work and.
See, I knew you were routine based, but that's pretty specific, and I love every bit of it because it gives great context. I'm loosely routine based. I'm getting there. I'm working on it. So, the next step, or the next actionable step that I wanted to give is just find a tribe. I know we've kind of talked about it a little bit throughout the podcast, but like, find those dudes that you can go to for just about anything, not just specific to the job, but like for everything. I know it's awesome to where, and it's happened to me, not just by Brad, but from other people too. And like, hey, Velez, you need to straighten up, or why are you acting like that? So to call you out on your bad things that you're doing, right? Like, it helps to have those, because when it happens to me, I'm like, okay, why are they like, first and foremost, I get a little defensive about it. I'm not gonna lie. Like, okay, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing X, Y, Z. But after moments, I'm able to take a step back from that and just think about like, okay, obviously they're seeing something that I'm not. So I take that into context and really try to change whatever I'm being called out on. So having the group of like-minded individuals that know what I want out of my life and what I want people to see about me is good to have, like, those people to call you out on that and be able to kind of get you back to your zero, if that makes sense. So the tribe part, I think, is huge. I know Brad probably feels about the same way I do on that.
Yeah, you need tribe, man. We're creatures of community, and we need people around us, people to pour into and people to pour into us. So find mentors, find people that you can mentor. I think is not only important and healthy, but honestly essential for growth, and essential for maintaining that positive mindset and positive direction. Because we're selfish, and sometimes it's hard for us to get out of our own perspective. So having people around you, like you said, that are going to call you out and be like, "Hey, man," even if it's something simple like your attitude or things you're doing, whatever it is, you need those people in your life. And it can be your company at work. I always tell guys, whenever you're trying to put in for a house, if you have the opportunity to move stations, whatever department you're in, choose the station based on the people, not on the apparatus, not on the location, not on the fire duty, whatever it is. Choose the district based on the people, or the station based on the people, because you need to surround yourself by people that are going to do that for you, hold you accountable. Yeah, I think it's extremely important.
The next one is going to be go to work and check on your homies, man. We kind of talked about that. Get a feel for how they're doing for the day and just check in with them. Ask good questions. Try to be insightful on, whether they're in a good mood or a bad mood, doesn't matter, but that's a step that you could take. Check on your homies and just ask good questions. Even if they are in a good mood and you're like, well, I'm supposed to do this because someone's having a bad attitude. No, not necessarily. Get in the habit of just checking on your boys, making sure everything's good at home, making sure everything's good with what they're doing that day, and just love them and be there for them regardless of what they're going through.
Yeah, and lead with I would say, to add to that, I think it's great, is lead with a heart of authenticity. Come to them, and it doesn't have to be the same question every time. Hey, man, how's your wife? How's your kids? Like whatever, like, how was your day? Right? Did you enjoy your days off? Like, it could change it up. Just lead with a heart of authenticity, and it doesn't have to be scripted. I think it'll be much more organic. Yeah. And just get a pulse of your people. Doesn't matter if you're a firefighter. Doesn't matter if you're a driver. Doesn't matter if you're the company officer. Especially if you're the company officer, it's almost a must. But go in there and figure out where everyone's at. It's going to give you a good read on how to shape the day.
I think we've actually talked about this before. You kind of brought it up, and I know I've talked about it before. It's just like the authenticity of checking on your people. Like, people can read right through the questions that you ask them when they don't come from an authentic place within yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You can't, like, I think a good tactic, if you will, and I don't want to be manipulative or anything like that, but a good tactic I've employed to just work on this has been asking Brad, hey man, how's things at home? How's your wife and kids? And you tell me, your oldest is a little sick or whatever. Okay, cool. That next shift, I'm gonna check on that specific thing. Oh, hey man, how's your oldest kid doing? He's feeling better.
Mm-hmm.
Like, instead of like, hey man, how's your wife and kids? Again, so remembering what people tell you and then following up with that, I've always found to be super effective, because I know when it happens to me, I'm like, oh man, I forgot I even told you that. Like, it means a lot that person not just asked the question, but they were actually listening to me. So following up with what they talked about and what they told you, I think it would also be really good. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it shows you care. Yeah, that's it.
And the last one we kind of already hit on, but something I'm sure we could elaborate on a little bit more, is just anticipating the curveball. Showing up to work and just having like a mindset or a heart of like God's will. Whatever He's going to do is what I'm going to walk through, and whatever I'm called to do today, that's what I'll do. Not getting my sights set on, hey, we planned last shift that we're going to have this big, nice, cool training we've been looking forward to for the last 2 weeks, and now we got to go out and do a PR event, check hydrants, whatever the case may be. Just be ready to anticipate the curveball and go with the flow of the day. Would greatly help your attitude towards whatever's coming your way. So I think that's going to be it for the day. Just remember, like we kind of talked about it at the beginning, and I just wanted to reiterate it, like, we don't control what happens to us. The only thing that we can control is how we react to those situations. Our attitude is no one else's choice but ours. Regardless of what's happening at home, or regardless of whatever's happening to you at work, like, you control your attitude. You set the tone for yourself. You can control your mindset strictly just by doing and practicing some of the things we talked about today. I hope that through these steps that you're able to improve, even if you already think you have a great attitude coming into work. I hope you're able to put some of these things into practice and work on your attitude for the better, whether, like I said, whether or not you have a good attitude or a bad attitude. And I hope this helped in some way. What to expect from here on out. Our goal is to do bi-weekly, so 2 times a month do this. Kind of dubbed it Lead Well Wednesdays. I want to release it on the 1st and 3rd Wednesday of each month. I'm not going to promise to be perfect, but I know you can at least expect 1 episode a month. if you guys have any advice, or you guys have topics that you want to hear about, or principles that you want to hear about, dude, just send me a DM and we'll cover it. Like I said, I know Brad's very passionate about leadership. I'm passionate about leadership. I've made this comment before, and it's not to say like, look at me, but like, I listen to read something about leadership every single day, whether it be the Bible or a podcast or that devotional that I know Brad has sitting right beside him. I read something about leadership or listen to something about leadership every single day, as I think everyone should, because that's the only way that we're going to grow as leaders and as people and as firemen. So if you guys want to hear something, just submit it, DM me. I'll take a look at it. Nothing is too small or too big to tackle. Some might just take a little bit more planning. So I don't know, Brad, do you want to talk about what you're about to do at all?
Yeah, I can talk about it. Let me hit something real quick on just like kind of goals for the podcast. Like John said, just to reiterate, we want to give you guys super practical steps. There's a lot of leadership podcasts out there that, teach you principles and values, and those are great, man. You need to be engaged in that. I don't think you accidentally become a good leader. Nobody's born with just a exceptional, depth of leadership. You got to study this stuff. But the goal, I would say, or one of the goals in this podcast, is to give you some practical steps. How do you take those values and concepts, principles, and put them to work at the firehouse, whether it be attitude or whatever, how to lead well? That's the goal. So I'm really excited to do this. I think that there is a need in the fire service for people that are, striving to be good leaders and maybe know some concepts. They just don't know how to put it into practice every day at the firehouse. So that's one of the main goals. Yeah, I'm fixing to be hosted on Fit to Fight Fire with John Spira. We're going to talk a little bit about the apartment fire that we had in Longview that we got to talk about on Grab's podcast. I'm pretty excited about it. It's just an opportunity to talk to him and talk through some things that happened to me. It was very timely that fire occurred when it did in my career. And John just kind of wants to unpack some of that, wants to unpack kind of what God did. And if you guys want to listen, I'm sure that'll be coming out soon. So just stay tuned to that. I'm pretty pumped and honored to be on that podcast with him. So looking forward to it.
Yeah, and for context, if you guys have no clue what he's talking about, go to the Grabs podcast. I'll link it below in the show notes. That way you guys have like a direct route and listen to that podcast, and it's pretty powerful. And it honestly, like, I could say this because I wasn't necessarily directly involved. Like, our guys killed it, and I'm super proud of them. And it's not from like a overly prideful thing. Like what they did was awesome, and they did some good stuff, to say the least. And so just go listen to that. And then, yeah, I know I'm going to look forward to the Spare podcast. I think it's going to be awesome. John has a great way of pulling things out of people and asking really great questions. And obviously the story alone is enough, but like just what God has done since then has been amazing. So coming down the pipe, obviously we're going to be streamed still through Firefighter Nation. The second episode with me and Preston should be dropping here pretty soon. I think I've talked about it before, but upcoming guest was Chief David Rhodes. You got Jesse and Micah Horton, Josh Burchick, and we're going to record with Blake Stinnett from Next Rung here this month. And those should be released here in the coming months. Once again, I'm super thankful for the support that we've received. I should have said this at the beginning, but if you found value in this episode, man, just share it. Not saying that I'm not open to sponsors or anything like that, but we don't have sponsors. And so really the only way that we're going to grow is just through word of mouth and sharing. So if you like this episode, if you like what we're doing here, if you want to hear more, just share the episode. And like I said, if you have other principles or concepts that you want to hear about, by all means, reach out. Bear with us as we're kind of, I would say that this is probably harder to do with you than it has been with a complete stranger that I've never met before. So bear with us through some of the awkwardness, and we're going to get there eventually. I appreciate Brad for taking the time and doing this, and looking forward to seeing where this goes. So thanks, Brad.
Glad to be here, man.
All right, guys. Till then, stay tuned, be safe, and we'll catch you on the next one.